Before the divorce, I wrote fairy tales. After the divorce, I exiled myself to Detroit and became a best-selling horror novelist. My readers asked why my style changed so drastically. I told them, before you die, you have to get a little wild. The basement of this villa was my forbidden zone, until the agent brought in a new tenant, Ethan Hayes, my ex-husband, whom I hadn't seen in 4 years. He still had that cop's sharp gaze, steady and stern, but beside him was a 5-year-old boy whose eyes were exactly like his. We had only been divorced for 4 years. He handed me a handkerchief to wipe my coffee-scalded hand. Alara Vance, there is no need to hold on to the past. I clutched the handkerchief, remembering that rainy night 4 years ago when he pushed the divorce papers toward me and said, I betrayed you. Now I finally saw the proof of that betrayal. Before turning to go back to the basement, I tossed out a line, I just don't want to get too involved with a married man. As I brushed past him, he suddenly grabbed my wrist. A small packet of white powder fell from my pocket. He picked it up, his eyes instantly turning sharp. What is this? I snatched the powder back, looking up at him. None of your business. Alara Vance, don't tell me you have fallen that low. He pinned me against the wall, bloodshot eyes staring into mine. I pushed him away with all my strength. On the day we divorced, you said my affairs would no longer concern you. Closing the door, I collapsed onto the table, trembling with pain. That packet of powder was morphine. The doctor said the blood vessel in my brain was pressing on a nerve, making surgery impossible. I could die at any moment. Alara Vance POV. Before the divorce, I was an unknown fairy tale author. After the divorce, I exiled myself to Detroit, one of America's grittier cities, and became a best-selling horror novelist. All my readers thought I had been traumatized by the divorce, which was why my writing style had transformed into something with a violent aesthetic. Responding to the buzz on the forums, I quoted a line from one of my characters. Before you die, you have to get a little wild. In the basement, lit only by a desk lamp, the glow from the computer screen reflected on my pale face. I lit a cigarette, my red nails making my hands look even paler. Night bloom. All right, usual rules. 10 lucky readers picked yesterday can ask anything. My message instantly made the fan group explode. Piggle Writer, I'm first. Will the heroine in the next chapter escape the loop? My heart can't take it. I blew out a smoke ring, typing with one hand. Night bloom. Depends on my mood. As the message went out, questions about my current serialized suspense horror novel scrolled nonstop. River flows. Actually, I wanted to ask, why did you get divorced back then? I heard you and your ex-husband had a great relationship. At this question, the lively chat went silent, as if everyone was waiting for my answer. My tongue lightly traced my teeth as I carefully formulated a reply. Night bloom. Our relationship broke down. From that question on, the next few people became curious about my private life. November moon. How long did you and your ex-husband know each other before you started dating? Night bloom. He lived upstairs from me. We've known each other since childhood. Tiny grain. What's your ex-husband like and what does he do? If I became your ideal lover, would there be a way to trick you into giving me your unpublished works? Seeing these intrusive questions, I frowned, tapping my fingers lightly on the table, my interest fading. Suddenly my phone rang. I flicked the ash off my cigarette and answered. Ms. Vance, this is Mr. White, your agent. The tenant for the viewing is here. We'll be there soon. Got it. I hung up, gave a perfunctory answer to the remaining questions, then shut down my computer. I stubbed out the cigarette and went upstairs. Pushing open the basement door, the dazzling sunlight made me instinctively squint. The 2-story, sun-drenched villa was a stark contrast to the gloomy basement. December in Detroit was especially cold. The ruined streets were covered in snow, burying sin and decay beneath. After opening the front door, I started making myself coffee. Amidst the hum of the coffee machine, a black car pulled up outside the villa. A moment later, 2 men walked in. Sir, this is the house you wanted to see. The owner is also here. Hearing Mr. White's voice, I turned around. When my gaze landed on the man beside Mr. White, my pupils constricted. How could it be Ethan Hayes, my ex-husband of 4 years? He wore a black overcoat, his figure still tall and lean, but his handsome face no longer held the youthful confidence and tenderness I remembered. It was replaced instead by a somber maturity. A burning sensation on the back of my hand almost made me drop the mug. I frowned, setting down the full coffee cup. As I reached for a napkin, Ethan handed me a handkerchief. Are you all right? His voice was still that cool, alluring tone that could captivate any woman. I hesitated, then took it. Thanks. Mr. White noticed our familiarity. Excuse me, you two know each other? I looked at the man's impassive eyes, my throat feeling a little dry. Old friend. Ethan's gaze deepened. He turned to Mr. White and said, no need to look any further. This is it. My expression remained neutral. I knew Ethan was stubborn. He wouldn't easily change his mind once he'd decided something, so I only stated one condition. I only have one rule. The basement is my private space. You can't go there. Ethan nodded readily. All right. Mr. White was surprised by how smoothly the deal went, but also happy to have closed a sale. I'll go get the lease agreement. In the spacious living room, it was so quiet you could hear the wind outside. Ethan looked at me, calmly sipping my coffee, his eyes deepening. I had my long hair loosely tied up with a pencil, a black dress clinging to me, my amber eyes shadowed with a somber, gloomy aura. He asked, what are you doing here? I also asked, what are you doing here? Our simultaneous questions created an awkward silence. I pursed my lips. The chaos and violence here, it suits my writing. As I spoke, a hint of teasing entered my voice. What about you? Don't tell me you, a cop, came here to catch a fugitive. Ethan's expression shifted slightly. Just as he was about to reply, a 5-year-old boy ran in. The boy hugged his leg, his round, bright eyes full of excitement. Dad, is this where we're going to live now? Alara Vance POV. I felt like no plot twist I'd ever conceived for a novel could be as heart-stopping as this moment. The little boy in front of me had eyes exactly like Ethan's, making it impossible for me to even pretend otherwise. Ethan looked at the boy, his gaze softening. Yes. Then who is this pretty lady? He hesitated for a moment before answering the child's question. question. "This is Ms. Vance." "Hello, Ms. Vance." Hearing the boy's clear, chirpy voice, I could only manage a strained smile. Ethan ruffled the boy's hair, calmly explaining, "His name is Leo. He just turned 5. He's not very well, so I brought him here for treatment." Just as he finished speaking, Mr. White came in with the contract. "If everything looks good, you can sign. For now, it's a short-term lease for 1 month. If you have any issues later, feel free to call me." After the contract was signed, Mr. White left, and Leo eagerly went to explore upstairs. The aroma of coffee filled the air, but the atmosphere in the living room was heavy. Finally, I broke the silence. "We've only been divorced for 4 years, but your child is 5. My tone was tinged with bitterness, sounding like an accusation, or perhaps a lament for myself. Ethan's throat worked. "I told you when we divorced I betrayed you." Just like before, his answer was direct and unreserved. My hand, holding the coffee cup, trembled. Emotions that had lain dormant for years surged forth again. I thought I had moved on, but unexpectedly, my heart still ached with the same numbness as it had 4 years ago. I took a deep breath, turning my head so he wouldn't see my eyes welling up. "You didn't just betray me, you betrayed yourself." With that, I turned and went back to the basement. Closing the door, I sank to the floor, feeling drained. As I closed my eyes, memories flashed through my mind. Warm sunlight, a bright study. I had just finished typing the end of a fairy tale when Ethan, home from work, gently hugged me from behind. "How was today's story?" "The princess and prince lived happily ever after." I snuggled contentedly in his arms, my eyes shining as I smiled. I want our future children to read my fairy tales and grow up in our love. But opening my eyes again, the endless darkness pulled me back to that night 4 years ago. Torrential rain, cold, untouched dinner. Ethan sat on the sofa, smoking, while I stared blankly at the divorce papers on the table. He said, "I'm sorry, I betrayed you." That night, the gentle me turned into a madwoman. No matter how hysterically I pleaded and cried, Ethan remained unmoved. It wasn't until dawn, my tears dried and my voice hoarse from crying, that I finally signed the wife's signature line. The memories were now rusted, crumbling into fragments with the slightest touch. I swallowed the bitterness in my throat, got up, and sat in front of my computer. I lit a cigarette, put it to my lips, and started typing. But after less than 2 lines, I felt a headache coming on. I collapsed onto the table, falling into a drowsy sleep. I don't know how much time passed until I was startled awake by a knock at the door. I checked the time. It was already 7:30 p.m. I got up to open the door. It was Ethan. He had changed into a gray turtleneck sweater, sleeves rolled up to reveal the distinct veins on his forearms. An apron tied around his waist made his shoulders seem broader and his waist narrower. "I made dinner. Let's eat together." Hearing Ethan, I looked towards the dining room. The table was set with dishes I hadn't seen in ages, steaming hot. Leo was sitting obediently at the table, eating. My eyes darkened. "I remember you couldn't cook." Ethan pursed his lips, his voice a little lower. "Leo's mom couldn't cook, so I had to learn." His words felt like needles pricking my heart. We had grown up together, and even after we married, Ethan had never cooked for me once. But I never felt wronged back then. He was a cop, always swamped with work. It was good enough that he even had time to eat. For a moment, I couldn't tell if I felt more anger or more sorrow. I forced a bitter smile. "That's nice. She's luckier than your ex-wife." With that, I started to close the door. "Thanks, but I'm used to takeout. Someone will deliver my meal soon." Just as I finished speaking, the doorbell rang. "Hello, pizza." I opened the door, took the takeout, paid the tip, and prepared to go back to the basement. But Ethan called out to me, "Alara, you don't need to hold on to the past." Listening to his somewhat helpless tone, my palm involuntarily trembled. "I just don't want to get too involved with a married man." Ethan was speechless, a flicker of struggle passing through his deep eyes. As I brushed past him, he grabbed my hand. "Wait." Caught off guard, I stumbled. A packet of white powder fell from my pocket. Alara Vance's POV time seemed to freeze at that moment. A flicker of panic crossed my eyes. I reached down to pick it up immediately, but Ethan was faster. He held the white powder, his gaze on me filled with a brewing storm. "What is this?" My face was grim. I reached out and snatched it back. "None of your business." With that, I turned to leave. But the next second, his tall frame pressed against me, pinning me against the wall. "Alara Vance, don't tell me you've fallen that low." Ethan stared at me, his bloodshot eyes radiating a sharp chill. At such close proximity, I could see my own reflection in his eyes. I looked as disheveled as I had on the day of our divorce 4 years ago. I pushed Ethan away forcefully. "Don't forget, on the day we divorced, you said my affairs would no longer concern you." Throwing out that last sentence, I hurried down to the basement, slamming the door shut. Back in the basement, even the familiar dimness couldn't alleviate my discomfort. My head throbbed harder and harder, the nerves in my brain twisting like red-hot knives. I sat down at my computer, dumped all the powder into my mouth, then pulled out my phone and dialed a number. After a few rings, a clear male voice answered, "Ms. Vance, what's wrong?"
"Miss Vance, what's wrong?" My grip tightened around the phone. For a moment, I didn't answer. The morphine already dulled the sharpest edges of the pain, but not the pressure behind my eyes, the slow, crushing reminder that time was no longer on my side. "I need another prescription," I said finally, voice steady despite the tremor in my fingers. There was a pause on the other end. "You're taking it more frequently than before." "I don't have a choice." A quiet exhale. "You said the dosage was supposed to hold you through the month." A faint, humorless smile touched my lips as I stared at the dim glow of my computer screen. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat waiting to flatline. That was before my past decided to move into my house. Silence again. He understood enough not to ask further. "I'll send someone," he said at last. "But Alara, if you keep increasing." "I know," I cut in softly. "Just send it." The call ended. For a few seconds I just sat there, listening to the hum of the basement, the distant creak of the villa above me, and the faint sound of footsteps, Leo's small, careless running steps across wood floors, like nothing in this house had ever been broken. Then my phone lit up again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, something old, reckless, and tired, made me swipe it open. Alara. Ethan's voice. Not a question. Not a greeting. Just my name, like he'd been holding it in his mouth for years and finally let it bleed out. I closed my eyes. You're in my house, I said calmly. I know. A pause. Then, quieter, we need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, the pain pulsing behind my skull in slow waves. We already did that 4 years ago. Another silence, heavier this time. I saw the packet, he said. That wasn't ordinary medication. My fingers tightened around the phone. Of course he hadn't let it go. Of course he was still that man. The one who never stopped digging until he hit something buried. I exhaled smoke toward the ceiling, slow and controlled. You came here for a house, I said. Not my life. I didn't know you were here, he replied. That almost made me laugh. Almost. Above me, a chair scraped. Leo's voice floated faintly down the stairs, calling for his father, small and bright and unaware. The sound made something in my chest twist. I stood up slowly. If you're done, I said, I'm working. Alara. I hung up. But before I could set the phone down, a new message popped in. This time, it wasn't Ethan. It was my agent. Miss Vance, the delivery is delayed. The courier was intercepted on the way to your address. My breath stopped. Not pain this time. Something colder. Something deliberate. And then, from upstairs, a sudden crash. The sound upstairs didn't echo so much as slice through the house. A crash, wood and glass, something heavy hitting the floor. Then silence. That kind of silence that isn't empty. It's waiting. My phone was still in my hand, Agent White's message glowing like an accusation. Courier intercepted. My pulse thudded once, hard enough to spike the pain behind my eyes. Upstairs, Leo didn't scream. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Ethan moved before I did. Footsteps fast, controlled, the instincts of a man who didn't hesitate when something turned dangerous. I heard a chair scrape violently, then the sharp sound of a drawer opening. A weapon being checked. I was already at the basement door when I stopped. The rule I had set. The basement is my private space. And now something had just broken upstairs. Another crash. Closer. A child's muffled gasp, finally. My hand hit the door handle. I hesitated only once. Then I went up. The basement door swung open, and cold air swallowed me whole. Each step up the stairs made the pain in my skull flare brighter, like my body was protesting the decision. By the time I reached the living room, the scene had already shifted. The coffee table was overturned. The dining chairs were knocked sideways. One of the windows was shattered inward, snow blowing into the villa in thin, slicing streams. And in the center of it, Ethan stood between Leo and the broken glass, one arm shielding the boy behind him. Across from them, half in shadow near the fireplace, stood a man I didn't recognize. Dark coat. Gloved hands. Too still. Not a burglar. Not random. His gaze moved to me the second I appeared. Like he had been expecting me all along. Alara Vance, he said softly. My stomach tightened. Ethan's head turned slightly toward me, his voice low but sharp. Get back downstairs. I didn't move. Leo clutched Ethan's sweater, eyes wide, but not crying yet, like he didn't fully understand danger, only tension. The stranger smiled faintly. I was told you might still be sensitive to interruptions, he said. Especially during writing. My fingers went cold. That wasn't a coincidence. That was knowledge. Intentional knowledge. Ethan shifted a step, positioning himself more firmly between us. Who sent you? The man tilted his head. No one sent me, he said. I came to confirm something. His eyes flicked, just briefly, to the overturned coffee table. To where I had been sitting earlier. To the exact place I usually wrote. Then back to me. The medication delay, he continued, calm as snowfall. That was unfortunate timing. My breath slowed. So it wasn't just interception. It was control. Ethan noticed the shift in my expression immediately. His voice dropped. Alara, what medication? I didn't answer. Because the stranger answered for me. The kind that keeps her alive long enough to finish her stories. Silence hit the room like a second explosion. Even Ethan froze for half a beat. Just enough. The stranger moved. Fast. Too fast for someone who had been standing still. Ethan reacted instantly, shoving Leo backward as he lunged. But the man wasn't aiming for Ethan. He was aiming for me. I barely had time to step back before something sharp flashed in his hand. Not a gun. A syringe. And in that split second, I understood something far worse than fear. He hadn't come to break in. He had come to replace what was stolen. The syringe caught the dim light in a thin, sick arc. Not a weapon meant to kill quickly. Something slower. Controlled. Personal. Ethan moved between us again, faster this time, his shoulder slamming into the attacker's arm. The syringe jerked off target and smashed into the wall instead, its contents splattering into the wallpaper in a dark stain that immediately began to dissolve the paint. Acidic. My mind registered it before my body did. Ethan grabbed the man's wrist and twisted. Bone cracked sharply in the silence. Leo made a small sound behind him. Not a scream. A stunned inhale. The attacker didn't shout. He only exhaled, almost amused, like pain was a secondary detail. Then his gaze snapped to me again. You're running out of time, he said quietly. Ethan tightened his grip. Who are you working for? The man's smile thinned. No one you can arrest. His free hand moved, too smooth, too practiced, and something metallic clicked in his palm. A second device. Not a syringe. A trigger. My brain caught up a fraction too late. Ethan, I started. But the stranger had already pressed it. A soft pulse of sound filled the room. Not an explosion. A frequency. High, piercing, wrong. My vision fractured instantly, white noise flooding the edges of my sight. My knees buckled as pain lanced through my skull, right where the blood vessel pressed against the nerve. The same place. The exact place the doctor had warned me about. I hit the floor. Ethan shouted my name, but it sounded like it was coming through water. The attacker stepped back smoothly, shaking Ethan off with a violent jerk of his injured wrist. This is just confirmation, he said. She's still responsive. Then his eyes flicked down to me one last time. Almost satisfied. You were never supposed to survive the first rupture. My breath stalled. First rupture. That wasn't medical language. That was design. Ethan turned sharply. What did you say? But the man was already backing toward the broken window. Snow whipped around him like static. And then, just before he jumped out, he looked at Leo. Not Ethan. Not me. Leo. That one looks just like you did, he said softly. Then he was gone. Silence slammed into the room again. The high-frequency ringing faded, leaving only my own ragged breathing and the sound of snow pushing through shattered glass. Ethan dropped to his knees beside me immediately. Alara, look at me. His hands hovered over me like he didn't know where to touch without breaking something worse. My vision blurred in and out. Leo was crying now. Quiet, shaken tears. Ethan didn't look away from me. What did he mean? He demanded, voice tight. First rupture? What is he talking about? I tried to sit up. Failed. The pain in my skull pulsed like a second heartbeat. So I laughed instead. It came out thin. Wrong. I told you, I whispered. It's just a tumor. Ethan's expression changed instantly. Don't lie to me. I swallowed. The basement door below us creaked faintly, like the house itself was shifting its weight. I forced my eyes to meet his. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't know if I was more afraid of him, or of the fact that whoever sent that man knew exactly what I was. Ethan didn't move for a long moment. The only sound in the house was the wind pushing through broken glass, carrying snow across the floor like ash. Then Leo's small voice broke through it. Dad, she's bleeding. That snapped something in Ethan. He reached for me again, careful this time, like I might disappear if he held too hard. But I caught his wrist. Weak. Shaking. Still enough. Don't, I whispered. His jaw tightened. Alara. I said don't. The pressure in my skull was no longer just pain. It was rhythm. A countdown I had learned to live with. And now, for the first time, it felt like it was being watched. Measured. The house lights flickered once. Then again. A soft mechanical hum threaded through the silence, somewhere deep in the walls, like something waking up. Ethan heard it too. His eyes lifted slightly. What is that? I closed my eyes. Because I already knew. Not the villa. Not the basement. Not even me. The story. All this time, I murmured, almost to myself, I thought I was writing horror. Ethan's grip tightened. Alara, what are you talking about? The hum grew steadier. Structured. Like a system locking into place. My agent's earlier message flashed in my mind again. Courier intercepted. Not delayed. Intercepted. Like someone had been waiting for it to move. Like they always knew where it would go. I opened my eyes. And I finally understood why the basement was never just a basement. Why the rule mattered. Why Ethan showing up again was never coincidence. I looked at him, really looked at him. You were never supposed to come back here, I said quietly. Ethan's expression hardened. That man just tried to kill you. A faint, tired smile pulled at my lips. No, I corrected. He tried to wake me up. Leo's crying stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was worse. Ethan turned slightly. Leo? No answer. A beat. Then the boy spoke again, but his voice wasn't the same. Calm. Flat. Too composed. Containment breach detected. Ethan froze. I exhaled slowly. So it had reached him too. The boy looked up at Ethan, eyes still the same shape. But empty in a way that didn't belong to a child. Subject Nightbloom is no longer stable, Leo said softly. Recovery protocol will initiate shortly. Ethan stepped back instinctively. What the hell is this? I pushed myself upright with effort that felt like tearing through glass. And finally, I said it out loud. Not as a writer. Not as a woman. But as the thing I had been trying to outrun. It's not my illness, I said. It's my manuscript. The house lights went out. For half a second, there was only darkness. Then, a faint glow rose from the basement door. Like ink bleeding through paper. And from below, something began to turn the page. The basement light flickered again. That same ink-like glow pulsed up the stairs, but this time, I didn't move back. Ethan stepped in front of me anyway, instinctively shielding me like he still had the right. Leo stood perfectly still in the middle of the room, head slightly tilted, that same unnatural calm and his voice lingering in the air. But I was done being afraid of my own story. I took one step forward. Then another. Each step made the pressure in my skull shift, not worse, not better. Just changing. Like something inside me had finally stopped fighting itself. Behind me, Ethan called my name again, quieter this time. Alara, don't go down there. I didn't turn around. I already did, I said softly. A long time ago. I reached the basement door and placed my hand on it. The glow didn't burn me this time. It recognized me. The latch clicked open on its own. Behind me, I heard footsteps, Ethan following. Leo too. I didn't stop them. Downstairs, the basement was no longer dark. It was filled with pages. Not paper scattered on a desk, but floating lines of text suspended in air, like a story unfinished and waiting to be rewritten. At the center of it all was a single blinking cursor. Waiting for me. Ethan stepped beside me slowly. What is this place? I exhaled. The part of me I buried, I said. And the part of me that never stopped writing back. Leo tilted his head. Is it dangerous? For the first time, I looked at him not as a mystery, but as a child. I knelt slightly, ignoring the pain that still lingered at the edges of my mind. No, I said gently. Not anymore. The cursor blinked once. Twice. Then paused, as if listening. I reached out. And instead of morphine, instead of fear, instead of the past, I typed. End. The floating pages shuddered. The ink light softened. The pressure in my skull dissolved like snow hitting warm ground. Above us, the villa windows stopped rattling. The wind outside eased. Silence came, but not the heavy kind. The peaceful kind. When I turned back, Ethan was still watching me, but something in his expression had changed. Not suspicion. Not confusion. Recognition. Like he was finally seeing me without the weight of everything that had broken us. Leo tugged lightly at his sleeve. Dad, it feels quiet now. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah. He looked at me. And for once, there was no accusation in his eyes. Only relief. You look like yourself again, he said. A laugh escaped me, small, real, and unbroken for the first time in years. I think I finally am. I walked up the last step toward them. Not away from the past. Not trapped in it. Just forward. And this time, when Ethan reached for my hand, I let him.